concerns, any needs that you have as we move forward through this recovery process. So to start us off, before we get into the actual program, I just want to lay out some real quick ground rules for everybody. So because we're going to offer and allow citizens to have questions and public input, I think it's important to go ahead and establish some ground rules on the front end. So if we ask that only one person speak at a time, so if you have a question, a comment, that you do that one at a time, that we don't talk over each other. Also, anyone that wants to speak needs to step up to a microphone. Please don't try and do that from where you currently sit. Please come and step to the microphone. We ask that everybody be conscientious and cordial to one another, no personal attacks, no derogatory statements, no foul language, and most importantly, to be respectful of your tone, have a respect in your tone, in your language, and be respectful of all of our time. Tonight, I think, is a real great opportunity for us to participate in a very open and public process, but we do want to be respectful of everyone's time here tonight as we move forward. All right, so to start, we are going to start with Mr. Keith Stover, Pastor Keith Stover at Bible Union, to open us up with a prayer.
Let's pray together. Father God, I just thank you for your many blessings. And Father, although our town has been through a difficult time, we have been able to see your blessings all the way through it. Father, we have seen people that have come to help that we didn't even know that they realized that we were in trouble. We have seen neighbors that have worked together, Father, to get through some tough times. And Father, we've seen leadership that has been put together that's been able to help guide through this. Father, I pray, Lord, tonight as we've come together, that, Father, you bless this town hall meeting. That, Father, you help us to express our problems and our desires. And then, Father, you help us to work together to try to overcome these difficult times that we're in. Father, I also ask that you help us to be reminded of how you have blessed us. That, Father, there were no deaths in our area here. And that, Father, you have been able to help us move along faster than many people would even imagine. So, Father, we have been blessed, but, Father, we also need more help. Father, as people are still hurting, people are still struggling, we pray, Lord, for a blessing to help get them through it. Father, you send the help that we need. You send the workers that we need in order to help them. And so, Father, I just pray, Lord, for our area here. And, Father, just pray, Lord, your mighty hand be upon us. Now, Father, bless our meeting. Help us, as the mayor has already said, to be respectful of one another. And, Father, to come to a conclusion here tonight. So bless our evening now. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
All right, to start us off with information, I'm going to ask our representative from SBA, our Public Information Officer, connected to this disaster specifically, Liliana, just to bring you all some real key points about SBA as we move through that process.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Dresden. I'm so happy and proud to be part of this team that came on the ground to help all the people that they've been involved in this disaster in the December with the tornadoes. And I'm witnessed from January when we just been deployed in the area of the unsurmountable disaster that happened in this area. And I've witnessed not only the disaster that it was remaining in January, but also the effort, and also I'm proud to say that I like to go through the center of the city and see that the efforts of cleaning are there, they're present. I can see a big difference from January to now, and I'm happy to see that. And I'm happy that I have to leave and think that I've done a little bit my mission in Dresden in telling you about the disaster relief that's available here. So with that being said, I'm part of the Disaster Assistance of Small Business Administration. That's usually a traditional agency that you know under the Small Business, SBA. But my division deals with disasters, and we are deployed on the ground when something like this happens to let you know what's available in terms of disaster assistance in an area. So we've been operating in the Dresden Wellness Center on 8250 on Highway 22, and we've been taking applications for disaster loans and also for some of the economic impacts from businesses all the way through this time. The deadline is approaching soon. It's next week. It's March 15 for a physical deadline for these loans. They are very low interest loans with very long term for the recovery and for the repayment. And they are meant to aid not just businesses, but also the residents that they've been impacted. If by now, a lot of you don't know of what we do. It's been published in the media heavily, local, and also, at the level of city and county government. These loans are meant to aid you in the long run to recuperate from this disaster. They're not meant to, unfortunately, make you whole and rebuild everything, but they are an aid that's available to you. And that's my mission, to let you know about this, what's available. As I said, March 15, it's coinciding with the FEMA registration deadline. So if you haven't registered with FEMA by now, it's highly the time to do so and apply for a disaster loan with SBA at the Dresden Wellness Center. With that being said, I'm not going to take too much of your time. I just want to make sure that you know about this information. I brought some material with me, some flyers, and also, some fact sheets. And again, hopefully you know about this aid that's available to you. If you have any questions, please ask.
Does anybody have any specific SBA questions before Liliana steps away? All right, no questions.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up, I'm going to ask Mayor Washburn to come up and give updates related to the city, any comments that he would like to make.
I'd rather walk around than I had to stand behind the mic. Just to give you an update of what's going on in the city of Dresden right now, we're in the wait mode. And when I say in the wait mode, we received the public assistance declaration 2 to 3 weeks ago on Thursday, and we've taken bids for a company to pick up all of this trash that's out and around in our community on the sides of the roads. But the important thing to know right now is if you've got construction debris in particular, it's time to get it out to the edge of the road to be picked up all over town. And there are still volunteers working in our community to help with that task if you need help to do that. Mr. Tommy Wilson, Mr. Tommy, I don't see him here, but there he is over on the top row. He's the gentleman that you talked to. There's groups still coming in, a little at a time. We expect during spring break we're going to have some more college students to come in our community to help with that task as well, to get this debris out to the road. We're probably going to leave the vegetative debris, which is going to be trees and limbs and things like that, till after we get all of the other picked up, and then we can move that stuff to the road. One thing that FEMA does not allow is for any of the contractors to go out onto private property. They cannot go onto private property to clean up anything. It all has to be brought to the roadside. And that's their rule, that's FEMA's rules, that it must be brought to the roadside to be picked up. And so another important thing is once you get it to the roadside, it needs to be within reach of a track hole bucket. And that's usually within about 15 feet of the roadside, of the curb. And the truck will come down through there to be picking up and putting it into a truck to be trucked to a certified landfill. It must be trucked to a certified landfill, and that cost is pretty expensive for the city of Dresden and FEMA and the state of Tennessee to share. Roughly, FEMA will pay 75% of that cost. The state of Tennessee will share 12.5% of that cost, and the city of Dresden will be responsible for 12.5% of the cost of that debris that's inside our city limits, and then the county will pick up this 12.5% for the cost of that that's out in the county outside the city limits. So, in order to facilitate, make this process as quick as possible, we need your help. We need everybody's help to get this debris to the roadside. And if you need help doing so, there are people who will help you do that. And we'll do so gladly. They will do that to help you out in any way possible to get it cleaned up and get our city looking back in good condition. So when do we anticipate this starting? Well, tomorrow, Mayor Bynum and I have separate meetings with FEMA to discuss just about the subject's going to be how we get that process started. We cannot turn the contractor loose to do it until FEMA says we can, and that may be as much as 2 to 3 weeks from now. But it's an excellent opportunity to keep bringing stuff to the roadway, and maybe we'll have warmer and drier weather to facilitate that process. And once it starts, the contractor will probably make a first trip down through there and give you a couple of weeks to get things done. And then as far as bringing out more stuff that might be there. And I want to remind you that this pickup process is only going to be in the tornado impacted area where the debris, it's not, hey, I've got a bunch of stuff out in the storage shed I want to put out on the side of the road. It's only for the tornado impacted area for debris caused by the tornado and related things that happen as a direct result of the tornado. So when FEMA gives us the go-ahead, we will start. The contractor will make a first pass through the city, trying to get everything in the tornado impacted area picked up that's on the side of the road, give you a couple of weeks to bring more stuff out, and then they'll probably make another pass through the city, picking up again, and we anticipate that there will be a third pass probably another 2 to 3 weeks after that. So we are looking about 2 months total for the cleanup process to take, somewhere in that neighborhood. And it should be a good, clean process. We're hoping it's going to be a safe process. When you see these trucks working in the community with the heavy equipment, the claw trucks and all of that picking up debris, please be very careful around those trucks so that there's no accidents. None of the equipment operators get hurt or you get hurt. Sometimes the visibility out of those trucks and things is not the best in the world. And hopefully they'll have flagmen and folks to assist you in getting around them when it's on one of the city streets or the state highways. As you've seen, there's a lot of demolition going on in our community. A lot of that's been done by volunteers. A lot of it has been free to people who could not afford to. Some of it's been at reduced cost to people by contractors who are just here helping out. But one of the greatest things, one of the greatest blessings that we had in this community was the number of volunteers who turned out those initial few days and just scrambled to get trees up out of the road, to get lines up out of the road, to get the lumber and debris from houses and things up out of the roads, helping the roads up. And they went just above and beyond any imagination that I ever had that our city would advance this quickly in getting cleaned up after that tornado. So they were very efficient, and we still have volunteers. Every day we have somebody that's volunteering to help somebody in our community. Some of the things that we've talked about is in rebuilding. We have folks that have been to FEMA seeking assistance. We have folks who have gone to SBA to see about loan dollars. We've had folks who have had roofs put on houses courtesy of religious organizations. And they've had siding put on houses, windows put in, you name it, from volunteers. And it's been a wonderful process that we've seen there as well. In the near future, you're going to see more groups coming in, religious organizations coming in, bringing disaster relief teams in, and they are going to be assisting as well. There's going to be some lumber brought in. FEMA has some lumber that they have stockpiled. That lumber is going to be brought in, and it's going to be available to citizens seeking to rebuild or improve their properties in the tornado impacted area. And the best news about that is it's at no cost. It's at no cost. It's going to be part of what FEMA brings in their public assistance and individual assistance programs. So those are things that you can look forward to. There are probably also going to be some religious organizations going to assist in complete rebuilding of houses. Complete rebuilding of houses from the foundation up. And we don't know how many yet. It's all going to depend upon the number of people that we have coming into our city to assist in that. But these teams are going to come in and they have the expertise to build a house from foundation to all the way up, and including turning the electricity on. And that's going to be some assistance that is going to be available to our citizens in Dresden. The cost, maybe nothing, but it may be based on somewhat of your ability to provide some assistance as well. But the good thing is that that assistance is going to be available to get people back in their homes, get back where they can live and be secure, be in the dry, be in the warm place that they were accustomed to prior to the tornado on December 10th at about 11:13 p.m. What else is going on, you might ask? Well, in addition to that, you might have heard about some funds being raised. There's been approximately $500,000 in funds raised just to assist people in our community. Now, so one of the guidelines, and I'm not involved in that at all, and neither is Mayor Biden. We've elected to just take a step back from that, and there's going to be a committee appointed to actually decide on how those funds are distributed. And let me tell you what the decision preliminarily has been is that the funds are going to be deposited with United Way, which will serve as the banker for the organization. And this allocation committee will receive blind applications, meaning that those applications will be, nobody will know who's applying. They won't know whether it's Joe or Bob or Susie or Alice or whatever. All they know is that there's a need there, and their job will be to try to determine the value of that need and to provide funding out of those funds that have been donated. Just this week we received, or late last week we received notification that the Cookeville-Putnam County Disaster Relief Fund, which they closed 2 years ago, they closed some time ago. Their tornado was 2 years ago on March the 3rd. They went through the same process we are right here, and then they closed their disaster relief fund. They expended all the funds that were put in that for the assistance of the citizens that were impacted. And then after that, they considered it a closed matter until December 10th, 2021, when the city of Mayfield in Kentucky and other cities in the Mayfield were struck, or in Kentucky were struck, and then Tennessee, particularly Kenton, Dresden, and Weakley County, Tennessee, were struck by the tornadoes. So last week we had a Zoom call, and they announced to myself as mayor of Dresden, the mayor of Kenton, and also to the mayor of Mayfield, that they were gonna make a contribution. And they made a contribution of $240,000 that they raised in the city of Mayfield. In the city of Cookeville and Putnam County, just for our citizens here, none of which they knew. They didn't know anybody sitting in this room. They didn't know anybody impacted, but they knew the suffering that each and every one that was impacted have experienced through the recovery process up to this point. And they wanted to be a part of it because they had a lot of generosity shown to them when they were having the same situation that we're now in. $240,000 total. The city of Dresden and was going to be the recipient of $100,000. Mayfield was going to get $100,000, and the Kenton was going to get a $40,000 grant from them to completely expend all of those funds. And the instructions for those funds were that they were to go to assist those impacted directly by the tornado. Direct impact. So those funds will be going to the Dresden-Whately County Disaster Relief Fund, that committee I talked about for allocation. They will be paid over to them once we receive them. It should be just a day or two before we get them. And those funds will go in there to be a part of that money that has already been raised through the efforts of the Dresden Rotary Club, the Martin Business Association, and a host of other contributors that have provided money. And it's amazing. It was amazing. I was sat in a meeting today at the Dresden Rotary Club, and there was a partial part of a list read of the contributors that had been made to the Dresden Rotary Club. 90-something% of those were people from outside the Dresden-Whately County area. People care about you. If you've been impacted by this tornado, there are people all over this country sending money to try to help you rebuild and get you back in your home, get you back in a safe, dry place, and get air conditioning before summer gets here in Tennessee. That's part of the goal of everybody that you see sitting here in the city government of Dresden, and certainly Whately County government. It's our goal to get assistance to each and every person that is not made whole. And that's the term that's used in disaster relief. The goal is to make you whole. Not necessarily make you better than you were, but to get you back in the same condition you were when that storm came through on December 10th. And I didn't invent that term, by the way. That's what's been expressed to me many different times about what the goal is, to make our citizens whole, get them back in the same condition, get them back in homes, and if we might get them in better homes, that's even better. But we're looking at other things too. We've got regulations about rebuilding. Our planning commission in Dresden has already met about 3 times to address the zoning regulations and things to make it easier to rebuild on lots that are no longer, they're vacant right now. There's just dirt there. There's nothing there, and they're waiting for something to be rebuilt on. So we've addressed that in our Dresden Planning Commission. We're trying to figure out how to streamline that process so there's not a lot of government bureaucracy involved in it. We want our homes rebuilt, and we want our people back in Dresden. We have people move to Martin, McKenzie, Gleason, Greenfield, you name it. They've even Union City as far away that I know, and some even further away. But we want them back, and we want them back in Dresden, living and being productive citizens in our community. One of the things has been a constant concern and discussion among the emergency management team that we had put together afterwards is how do we provide housing? There's a lot of housing, and unfortunately most of our rental properties in Dresden, most of the properties that were damaged were rental properties. And how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, I'm charging that allocation committee with figuring out some way to use some of that money to help people rebuild homes of all sizes, and see if we can't get everyone back, regardless of social or economic status, and to ensure that we have the diversity in our community that we've always had. I said I was going to talk to the Martin Housing Authority and see if there's not the opportunity for us to actually find a location that they might build additional housing in our community. I think that would be a good step for us as well, as we try to rebuild and build upon the diversity of our community, and to ensure that those citizens who have been citizens of our community can return to the housing that they have. That's some of what's going on in Dresden. There's a lot of other things. If you drive around town during the day, you see demolition going on everywhere. Soon the demolition is going to quit. One of our goals is to rebuild a Dresden Municipal Complex. That is some place to house our fire department, which was completely destroyed. It's also a place that will house our police department, which was completely destroyed. And it'll also be a place that we can house our city hall that was completely destroyed. One of the things that we proposed for it is obtain some FEMA mitigation funds, get a grant to build a safe room in that building that would be a place that people could go for safety when another storm comes, if that eventuality happens. I've lived in Dresden close to 48 years, and this is the first major tornado that I've seen in our community. We've had some small ones take out a house here and a house there and do damage, but they generally do not have the devastating effect that this one did. They've never had the effect on lives that this one did. We've had floods in Dresden. We've had fires in Dresden. But they have not impacted our citizens the way this tornado did. And as I've gone through day by day out in the public and talked to people one-on-one, which is the way I prefer to talk, and talk to folks on a regular basis. Donnie Escher here was one of the first ones. He rebuilding his automotive service and done a fabulous job of not only building it back, but he built it back bigger and better, and that's where we're impressed by him. Tommy Wood, right next to him, is planning on building a grocery warehouse right next to Donnie, and it's going to be twice the size that it was. We have some other things that are happening in Dresden as far as economics goes. One of them, the Gleason Lumber Company, bought the Fred's building out on Highway 22. They're going to put a lumber barn hardware store there. And most people who've ever been around Dresden know that Baum Brothers Hardware has one of everything. If you can't get it, if they don't have it in stock, they can get it in 2 or 3 days and have it for you. And whether it's something to fit an old lamp that's 100 years old or something that's brand new, they've always had an invaluable resource for our community. The word is they're building back. It may be a little slower than what the operation out of Fred's are. It's going to be where Gleason Lumber has already started the process of shelving and things like that, but they're building back. You're seeing other stores build back. CBR restaurants building back, going to be better than it was. By my count, we're going to gain 4 new businesses in Dresden from the discussions I've had, and we're going to lose 2 when it's all said and done. And we're going to be plus 2 businesses. That's more jobs, 2 more businesses to hire people, 2 more businesses to sell goods and services to the people in our community. And something that we really haven't had before is going to be the lumber company. Well, it's been a long time. It's been 20 plus years since we've had a lumber company in our city. But we're going to have what's going to be the equivalent of 2 hardware stores and then 1 lumber company. And that's good. Another thing I have talked to folks about is we've got a meat company coming. We're going to sell smoked meat and type that's fresh for folks. That's something we haven't had, and it's going to be available to people in Dresden. They've got a location already picked out. They've already talked about rebuilding the building that is there now and improving it, making it to fit their needs. There's a lot of things like that going on, and some of the businesses that are going to build back are going to build back bigger. The Flyer Box is one example. It's located on the south side of the Core Square. It's now almost a level lot. Will be very soon. Next week that lot should be clean. The fire station came down today. The city hall has been down since earlier in the week. The police department came down at the same time as city hall. And we're going to build those back. You might have seen some the plans, the preliminary plans for approximately 20,000 square feet, including the fire department, which will be capable of housing 6 fire engines. We currently have a total of 5 pieces of fire apparatus, so it'll give us some room to grow in the future. It's also going to include room for bunks and showers where we can have full-time firemen at some point in time. Now we're an all-volunteer department, but 50 years from now, what do we need? We may need full-time firemen. 75 years, 100 years. This building is being thought out and proposed to encompass the needs of our city for a municipal complex up to 100 years from now. Hopefully, the building that we were in, some of it was 100 years old. It's a former bank, the old Dresden Bank, as a matter of fact. How many of you have banked it? I didn't think so, because it went out long before most of us were born. So, but it was a bank at one time, and the city hall was there. Some other things that we're looking at in addition to that at City Hall, we're talking about taking that whole block down, since everything on that block was destroyed. We're going to take and lower it down to street level, so you no longer have to climb about 7 steps to get to the sidewalk that went along City Hall in front of the DA's office and Keely Wilson's law office and the supervisory services, the Flyer Box and the old hotel. All of those, and then there's one other building that was a former dental office for Mr. Peeler that has been deceased for many years, and the building hadn't been used. But that building there is currently being looked at for a business expansion. We have an opportunity for a business to expand because of this demolition. We let the bid on that. The city of Dresden took the bid, and it's all been demoed at the current time. And they told me today, the fellows that are in charge of that probably within about a week we'll see that lot cleaned up, and they'll start bringing the elevation of that lot down to street level. It's going to be a more modern building. It will be something that will serve our citizens, every citizen in Dresden. We're looking at having a drive-through of the State of Tennessee Department of Transportation will let us come from the back of the building and exit out on Main Street. We're also, if you've ever parked in front of City Hall and gone into it, you know that the parking is tight. It's awfully tight to back out. We're going to move the building line back about 3 or 4 foot to create more room in the street out there. It may even come back further than that if possible, to widen that street in front of City Hall to make it easier to navigate down through there, and also to easier to back out and park in those parking spaces. Just some of the things that we're looking at to improve our community, and make it more user-friendly. Somebody said walker-friendly. Asked if it would be more walker-friendly. The answer is yes, it will be, because we will do away with a lot of those handicap ramps and things like that are currently there, because they won't be needed any longer. We will, it will be handicap-friendly and have all the slopes and things like that on the sidewalks that are normally installed in modern buildings, and will not be any step climbing anymore. All right, that sort of concludes what I wanted to say. I probably said a lot more than I wanted to say, but I'll entertain any questions from anybody that would like to have one. Yes, ma'am.
Like I've heard of the thing. My name is Callie Stone. I'm the YouTube market pacer. And my question is, I had seen that there were houses that had been damaged by tornadoes that were originally.
Please speak up, please.
Sorry about that. The houses were originally $200 to $300 in rent per month.
Yes.
Are there still going to be those houses, or are they all going to be $400 to $600?
I can't say that'll be up to the individual property owner. Now, a lot of the $200 and $300 houses were destroyed, and a lot of them were on Nelson Street. But a lot of those houses were destroyed. The property owners, it'll be up to them whether to build back and to have those houses back again. It's not up to the city of Dresden. It's certainly not up to me what they charge for their rent. That's one of the freedoms we have in this country. They can charge what the market will bear. But when I project that those houses will go to $400 to $600, I am saying that based upon what it's probably going to cost to build that size house back and amortize it, amortize the cost of that house. If you can talk the property owners that into building those houses and not have to amortize it, they might be willing to rent those houses for lower cost. I think the best way to get lower cost housing is through subsidized housing through government grants and things like market housing. That's the very best way to get the low cost rent housing back in Dresden. And I don't think that building houses, I don't think it's going to be possible. I build houses, I remodel houses, I build businesses personally, and I know what it costs to build, and it's never been higher than any time as it is today. But if we could do that, certainly the city government of Dresden would support it, but I don't think that's going to be possible. And I hope that Martin Housing can point us now. I'll be honest, I haven't currently spoken to them, and I might have misspoke earlier, but my idea was to speak to them after we sort of get a feel for where we're heading with all of this in our long-term recovery process and see what they can do to assist. We've also talked to the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, about grants and things that are available to help us redevelop our city. Those are some things we're going to apply for FEMA grants. We're going to apply for any grant that we can find to help people rebuild their homes, whether it's a smaller home or whether it's a larger home. There's no discrimination as far as what's rebuilt. We want everything rebuilt. We want those people back in Dresden regardless of who they were. But I'm afraid given the economic conditions, that might not be totally possible.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
My question is regarding the fund that was set up for donations.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you say it was United Way that is handling that?
United Way is going to be the 501c3 organization that's going to serve as the bank.
Okay.
There are not actually, United Way is actually not going to decide how that money is distributed. There's going to be an organization that consisting of the people who provided those funds, the larger organizations, if they so choose. If they say, we're just giving you money, we want to be clear of it, we don't want to make any decision. That's how that's going to be. But there will be local citizens of different walks of life on that committee to evaluate those blind applications. When I say blind, it didn't have any name of reference. It didn't have any name of who it might be or what their income is or anything. It's just going to determine a need and their ability to meet that need. And that's why again, that committee will set up its own operating rules. Mayor Bynum and I have not been involved in that process very much. I have not been involved in it at all. I chose to take the hands off to it. Mayor Bynum helped get it organized and going. And I think think it's gonna be something that will distribute funds without, knowing who was guilty to get them and not. Hopefully, we have an equitable distribution of those funds to everybody that needs them, and it's a fair distribution.
I have two specific questions, and you may not know the answer to this, and that's fine. Is there a certain percentage that is coming off the top that will pay the United Way workers? And also, do you know the time frame for distribution?
I do know the answer. I've sat in on a meeting in regard to that, in which that was discussed with the United Way. United Way does not plan to take a percentage on it. They're going to provide their services free of charge. There are no holding or handling fees by anybody that I'm aware of involving. The whole idea was to take these funds, 100% of these funds that were received, including $100,000 that come from Putnam County, and there's funds from everywhere. People all over this country have been so generous to us that we probably are going to have over 500,000 up, anywhere up to $1 million to distribute to 200 families and businesses. It's a lot of money, and hopefully, God willing, we're going to get our community rebuilt, and it's going to be better than it was. And there's going to be the money to do that, and some of these families are going to have homes that are much better than what they were before the storm, and that's our prayer that what's happened. Other questions? No.
Hi, Jeff. We miss your pizza, so have you found a place to relocate Poppy's?
Poppy's will probably be a year-long venture. We sort of have taken a back step. We're going to let everybody else. And Poppy's is what my kids called our hobby business. We started and operated about 24 hours a week in downtown Dresden, and it was completely leveled as a result of the storm. And the same tornado area that got City Hall, because City Hall was at our back door. But we're going to take about a year and look at that. My original intention, and still is my intention, that the City of Dresden plan on donating that lot that it was on. It was a fairly large lot to the City of Dresden. And to ensure that the fire department could go back in that location and turn, instead of being facing Nelson Street, it would face Poplar Street and be a drive-through fire department, like many of the more modern departments are nowadays. But let's just say it's going to be a year-long process. We're going to evaluate what's going on. We're going to look for a more higher traffic count area, and it may show up as a food trailer or food truck. We don't know at this point in time.
Right, I'll patiently wait then and ask you again next year.
Okay, keep after me. Anyone else? I'd be glad to answer any question anybody's got. Even the bad ones, the hard ones. All right, I don't hear anymore, but I want to thank you for coming tonight. I want to thank you for being supportive of our community. It's our prayer. It's our prayer that God would bless each and every one of you, lift you up, put you back in as good a condition as you were as quickly as possible. And that when all is said and done, that we all find peace in this rebuilding process. And you hear the emotion in my voice. You hear my voice tremble because I am so dedicated to this. And we're going to work. We're going to continue working until we get to where we can call Dresden a beautiful place to be again. And we're going to have a diverse citizenship. And it's not for the rich, it's not exclusive for the poor, it's for everybody from top to bottom. And we're we're gonna be a stronger city because we're gonna love each other just like we did the day after that storm when there were no whites and there were no blacks and there were no Democrats and there were no Republicans. We were just working together for one purpose, arm in arm, as brothers and sisters loving each other. And that's what I challenge you to continue doing as we go forward. Thank you.
Anybody else want to take the camera?
Okay. So just before I get into my comments, I do just want to mention that we have several people in the room that if you have any additional questions, we hope that we'll be able to assist in getting those answers to you. One thing I do want to mention is that with any question, what we want to do is answer that in a general term. If you have an individual question, we're certainly taking those questions down and we'll answer your specific question if it relates to you as an individual, but we think there's an opportunity that as we move forward through any other additional questions that we can do that from a collective standpoint. I do just want to mention that West Tennessee Legal Aid is here, so any individuals that potentially need to have a conversation with a person with legal representation, they're in the room, and we're also working on a legal aid clinic for individuals that need some sort of legal assistance, but do not have the means in which to pay for those. Cary Counseling Center is located over here in the corner. They've been a great partner for us through this recovery process. We know that there is still a lot of concern, a lot of feeling around recovery or storm impact. As I was driving to work this morning, it dawned on me that we are not even in tornado season yet. And as weather continues to change in unexplainable ways from day to day, we know that there is apprehension in the community, and so we want to make sure that we provide a resource for you all to have conversations with trained professionals in how to deal with those. United Way is here this evening, and so if there is any additional clarification that we need to have, we certainly want to provide that from them. UMCOR, which is the United Methodist Committee on Relief, is also here. UMCOR is going to be a partner in our long-term recovery, which I'll get into in just a minute, but UMCOR will essentially be taking on the primary responsibility around case work and case management as we move into long-term recovery. We have a representative from Integrity Group, which is our contractor through the government's FEMA reimbursement process. So both the City of Dresden and Weakley County government have enlisted the services of Integrity Group to help us make sure that we get the most reimbursement possible. How that impacts you as a citizen is that reimbursement is going to come as we pick up debris around the City of Dresden and in the impacted areas outside. We have representatives from FEMA here, especially as it relates to volunteer organizations and resources. We have a representative from TEMA here. We also have members of our congressional delegation represented in the back of the room, and so I won't ask you all to attack them like I did the last time, because we have now gotten the assistance that we need from the federal government, or have started to get the assistance we need from the federal government. So as it relates to long-term recovery, something that I want to make sure that we touch on is there's two pieces of long-term recovery that we have not technically started in yet. Long-term recovery essentially won't begin until we get past the March 15th deadline. First is the individual's long-term recovery. That will be, like I mentioned, with groups like UMCOR. And so some of you all that have been impacted are survivors of the tornado, may have already gotten a call from somebody working with our recovery group. We have case workers that are making contact with everyone that we have seen either through the recovery center or the donation center, and making just an initial contact to say, have you gotten your insurance? Have you applied for FEMA? Have you applied for SBA? What are your additional needs, and what resources can be made available to you all? As we move forward, those caseworkers will then turn over to a case management system that UMCOR manages, and those case managers will then work with impacted survivors, especially on how we access and address unmet needs. Unmet needs are not just financial needs, they're also, how do I finish out whatever I need done at my home? How do I potentially get access to funding to make car repairs? Any number of unmet needs that weren't fulfilled. As we talk about unmet needs, one of the ways that we know that you don't have an unmet need, or that you may not realize you don't have an unmet need, is as you have gone through the process. So have you applied and have you worked with your insurance company? And I know from several faces that I have seen throughout this process that there is still struggle and challenges with private insurance providers. We also know that people are or underinsured, and that is still a challenge in the community. Have you applied for FEMA? The deadline to apply for FEMA is March 15th. Drop dead, stop, period, end of story. You cannot apply to FEMA after March 15th. That is extremely important. SBA is the exact same way. Whether you think you need a loan or not, you need to apply for an SBA loan, regardless of if you think you need it, regardless if you don't think you need it right now. If you don't apply before March the 15th, all of that dries up. And so if you get 6 months down the road and you think, oh, I could have taken out a loan for $40,000 at 1.85% interest, that resource is now no longer available to you, regardless of what your current situation is. So if you've already applied and registered with FEMA, you also need to come and apply with SBA. That is really important as we move forward because SBA is still here. There is still an opportunity to talk to a live person at the Recovery Center through at least March the 15th. You don't have to have all your stuff in, you don't have to have all your documents submitted, you just have to be in the pipeline by March the 15th. We also are announcing tonight that donations, as far as material donations, so our short-term donation center at Evergreen Street, we will stop referring people to that donation center after March 15th. We will have moved past the short-term recovery. And so at that point, all of those materials will be turned over to that nonprofit, and they'll be charged with making the decisions on how those resources are distributed, but they won't be part of the short-term recovery any longer. So the unmet needs and allocation. So as I mentioned, impacted survivors will potentially be assigned a case manager that will work with that case manager to address any unmet needs. That case manager will work with you. That will be an extremely close and personal relationship probably by the end of it. That case manager will then present those cases to that allocations group. Allocations or unmet needs, the unmet needs committee will be made up of the organizations that have received private donations that have voluntarily agreed to participate in that process. Nobody is asked to put their money into a single pot. Nobody's excluded from participating in the allocations group if they have resources. However, we do think that the allocations group will enlist the services of United Way to work as the fiscal agent. We also know that there are additional and unmet needs as it relates to an emotional need. This is an emotional process. We understand that it's an extremely complicated process as well. But the thing that we continue to tell people, instruct people, and advocate for is that you, as an impacted survivor, have to own your recovery. We can't do that for you. You have to take a part and take a piece in your recovery. If you don't, we can't get you the needed resources that you need. I know, again, from several of the faces that I see in this room, that there has been frustration, there have been challenges, there are things that have not gotten done yet that you would like to see done. But March the 15th really starts our long-term recovery process. Mayor Washburn and I, as he mentioned, will essentially take a step back and we will turn that over to the long-term recovery group. One of our chairmen of the long-term recovery group, Alicia Melton, is here tonight. She'll be chairing with Justin Price that long-term recovery group. That long-term recovery group will also deal with things like if you want to volunteer or need volunteers, we'll have a volunteer coordinator, a donations coordinator that will deal with resources like building materials or furniture or other additional resources that come into the community. Also, a construction manager that will deal with citizens that need any sort of repair or replacement in their home, and how does the long-term recovery group able to meet that need, and how do we facilitate that need? I know that one of the frustrations you're probably feeling is, and one of the things that I think is the most challenging is that many of you have debris still in your yard or sitting in front of your home. One of the things that I will tell you is that if you are or underinsured, you need to come to the Recovery Center and talk to us about how you get your debris to the right-of-way. Mayor Washburn mentioned that we can't, as the government, pick up that debris on your private property. It has to get to the right-of-way so that we can pick that up. Now, if you've contracted with someone to tear your house down and to remove it, proceed on. You don't have to wait for us. But if you need assistance in doing that, I can't give you an accurate timeline on when I think that's going to be done. I'm just going to be really honest with you. This is a long process. There will be vegetative debris in front of homes for a while. There will be construction material in front of homes for a while. And the city of Dresden and Weakley County as a whole will not look like it did on December the 9th for a good long time. That's challenging for us to say, and I know it's challenging for you to hear, but I think it's really important that we're open and honest as we move through this process. So with that, that's all the comments I have written down. So does anybody have any questions for me or any questions related to anything, either recovery related, where we currently are, or where we're going? You all have heard, anybody that's participated in something like this, and this is now the second town hall we've had a small business lunch and learn, we've had a counseling event where we've provided resources, and every single time I have stood up and said, this is challenging, it's hard work, it's not any fun for anybody. I still get to go home to my house, so I do not sit here and say I understand and know what you're going through. I do tell you that I sympathize with you, I think about you, I pray for you. But the most thing that I want to do is be able to provide you with as much information and resources as we can possibly provide. And so if you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask that question. Because if you have that question, more than likely somebody else has that question as well. And there's not a lot of people here tonight. But what we do have is the availability of 2 great newspapers, 3 actually, now I realize, in the community that can take that information and those questions and report it back out. I've told somebody earlier yesterday that this is all far too complicated to put in a Facebook post. It's too complicated for me to sit in my office and record a Facebook video because it's complicated and there's a lot of information and some of it can be misconstrued and misunderstood if we don't address it in the proper manner. And so now is an opportunity for you to ask any question you have. I think now is also an opportunity for you to say what you want. Oftentimes I get up and I talk about my vision and what I want to do and how I think the community should look. And all I am is a representative of you. And so we need your help in how to address what this community should look like. Not just in Dresden, not just in the areas that are impacted by the tornado, but all of Weakley County. How should all of Weakley County look when we move past this process? And so I hope that some of you all have some questions or have some comments. And at this point, I am finished.
Hello everyone, I'm Kaya Simmons, the person whose name has been thrown around quite harshly lately for asking questions and for clarification. A quick public service announcement to anyone sitting on the edge of their seat thinking there will be some kind of craziness happen, please sit back and relax. There will not be any uproar from my group. We have been and will remain respectful for the entire event and have approved 3 people besides myself to ask some questions and speak to you quickly today. Before we begin, I want to tell you about where I come from. I come from a household of poverty with a mother with triple positive breast cancer, a stepdad without insurance, and the absence of a few meals. I also lost my house and all possessions in a house fire 10 years ago, where me and my family were considered homeless for some time. I want to first ask, out of my group who came here with me today, if you live or have lived in poverty, can you please stand up? Okay, now if you are a drug dealer, meth head, or criminal, take a seat. Or have ever been. Okay, you guys can take a seat now. I understand the importance of maintaining control and order in a community, but there's a right and wrong way to do so. When these issues are visible in a community, it is easy to try and push them away or ignore the issue. Before coming here today, me and a part of my group went to Dresden on Friday to get a first-hand look at what the community was really saying. We went door to door talking to community members that are still here, encouraging them to come out today. A good portion of the community members also expressed a great deal of concern for the drugs in the community, as well as but a greater concern on how it's being handled. I also spoke with the local community leader who talked about his struggle as he continues to try and provide support through his church to give programs to the people in Dresden to help get them clean. One consistent opinion that was consistently expressed to me is how the police are handling the drug problem and ultimately leading to its continuation. The people and young adults who stand here and sit here with me today understand the importance and value of equal opportunity. For the people in my group who are students, we are consistently surrounded by people of all classes and walks of life. At UTM, it's the one place that it doesn't matter. I could stand here today and go into great detail about the effects of harmful phrasing, especially from a person in power. How a person in power labeling the poor as drug dealers and criminals will likely have influence over those in a small town when they make decisions on things like rent, and how a person in a position of power should be held to a higher standard and held accountable for their words. Instead, I would rather focus on taking some time to present some educational-based string of questions and facts. I want to start with some statistics to clear up misinformation spread on what poverty is considered. So for my people who have posters over here, can you please hold those up for me? According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the HHS poverty guidelines of 2022 are as follows. Household of 1, $13,590. Household of 2, $18,310. Household of 3, $23,030. Household of 4, $27,750. Household of 5, $32,470. Household of 6, $37,190. Household of 7, $41,910. And household of 8, $46,630. According to Data USA, the poverty rate in 2019 in Weakley County was 20.3%. Dresden was 17.1%, which was higher than the Tennessee poverty rate at 15.2% and significantly higher than the national average at 12.3%. According to the data, the largest demographic living in poverty in Dresden was females between 35 to 44 years old, followed by females aged 6 to 11, followed by males over 5. I give you this data to show how big of an issue poverty really is in Dresden, despite the downplay of the situation in recent articles. I will not stand here and pretend that I have all the answers because I simply do not, but I also will not stand by and listen to the situation being downplayed. It is up to the elected officials to see the issue and make a plan on how to correct it. I believe it is a great thing that there will be more jobs being brought into Dresden, as stated in the recent articles published by the Weakley County Press, as long as they're providing a livable wage. Jobs with a livable wage would allow for more opportunities to help pull the people out of the poverty line. I still want to propose some questions, however, to encourage critical thinking on the decision makers. When I went into the community and talked to the locals, not just the business owners and the upper class, they expressed more concerns to me than I originally noticed. Do these working class people have your ear and a seat at your table when the decisions are being made? I'm not a citizen of Dresden, so I ask the decision makers here today to listen to all citizens of Dresden, not just the ones in the inner circle. The direct quote that reads, "We talked to Martin Housing to see if they might take a look at bringing some more apartments here will give you some low rent, but you have to question, and this is sort of a catch-22. Do you want the low rent and the people that rent from those? This personal opinion stated directly after creates the question, how much is low-income housing really being looked at and fought for? It was also mentioned in the latest article that you would be working through a government agency to bring some low-rent housing. I would like to know which one. Has there been any contact at all yet? And what are some contingency plans if they're not willing to help? My last question has to do with the drug problem and poverty issues in Dresden and Whately County. What is being done to help solve these issues? One of the main arguments for wanting low-rent housing in Dresden is due to the drug problem. But would that not simply generate a higher homeless population, because that is not solving the issue, nor making drugs harder to get? The drugs will still continue to come in, but the people will not have a place to live. Thank you for your time and listening here.
I think there were questions there. Like, it was a little hard to hear off the feedback behind us. I think you all could hear us better. But what specific questions do you have?
So what I have first is, when I went out into the community and talked to the locals, not just the business owners and the upper class, they expressed more concerns to me than I originally noticed. Do the working class people have your ear and a seat at your table when you make the decisions on rebuilding?
So the question is does everyone have a seat at the table?
Yes, sir.
Are we going outside of those individuals in the community that we normally just tap, whether that's city board members, county commissioners? Who are the other people participating in the discussion around what the community should look like?
Yes, sir. In one of the recent articles, it was said that the community members were being listened to, but when I went out and talked to the community themselves, that did not seem to be the case. So when these decisions are being made, do they have a seat at the table or a listening ear?
Well, I don't know that they have a seat at the table, but they certainly have a right for public comment. And every city board meeting that we have, there is an opportunity for citizen input, and that is an opportunity for anybody to come and provide input on what we're doing in the city of Dresden. And that is an opportunity for your voice to be heard. Mr. Kesterson, sitting up at the top of the stairs there, regularly makes regular public comments. He was at our city board meeting last night, brought to our attention 2 or 3 things that need to be done in our community. We have other people that come to our board meetings regularly and do the same thing. So yes, you'll have a seat, but not necessarily the seat at the table where the decision's made, but you'll have a right to influence the deciders in that regard. I don't know if that answers your question directly or not, but
Out of some of the people that I talked to, they expressed some concern about showing up today. They said they have come in the past and had been talking over, yelled at, and had just went into utter chaos. What do you have to say to that?
I don't know that is a true statement, that anybody's ever showed up at a city board meeting and something went into utter chaos. Maybe they were at another board meeting that I wasn't at, but I've read some of the comments as well, and most of those comments that I saw posted on that site were people who had a vendetta.
This is not from the Facebook post. This is personally when I went door to door behind the courthouse and around the courthouse to specific people's homes asking questions. And I heard this from about 6 different people, that they were scared to show up because in the past when they felt very disrespected and they felt a bit scared to come here today.
I don't know who you're talking about, but with that, but I haven't witnessed that in the 7 years that I've been mayor, that somebody's shown up and they were yelled at or something. We've heard their input. Our city board has heard their input. Now, I've been going to city board meetings in Dresden for 48 years. I worked in the newspaper business, was the editor of the newspaper from 1974 through 2019 or thereabouts. And in that 48 years or so, forgive me if my math skips me right now, but
Yes, sir.
it wasn't my strong suit in college. during that period of time, I never witnessed it as a reporter or editor of a newspaper to the extent that you are describing, or those people describe to you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, there are sometimes disagreements. There are in any democracy
Absolutely.
disagreements.
Simply politics.
And sometimes those disagreements get powerful, and people get passionate about what they believe. But I haven't witnessed those things that you said. I've been to board meetings during that period of time all over this county, and I see people have passionate about their side. That doesn't necessarily translate into being scared of coming to board meetings and things. Maybe they're just scared that their opinion would be rejected, and I understand that as well.
At the city board meetings, how often is it that the people's voices listened to and took into consideration past the city board meeting?
I'm sorry. When I was sitting over there, and all I heard was echo. I didn't understand what you, and I'm having trouble even now understanding. I've got 67-year-old ears, and they don't hear some of these folks.
Yes, sir. So I completely forgot that question.
Go ahead and answer the question.
I completely forgot, but I can go ahead and move on to the next one if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. The direct quote that was in the article that brought all of this to UTM and our students that aren't necessarily part of any kind of organizations, kind of direct light, it read that we talked to Martin Housing, and this is the part that you said that you may have misspoke.
Well, I'd say the misspoke, misquoted. I don't have the recording. But
Right.
I haven't spoken to him yet, but I
Yes, sir.
intend to, and
Excuse me, Jeff, we can't hear you. Thank you.
Okay, I've got the same problem. I may have misspoken. I may have been misquoted. I don't have a recording to know. But either way, my intentions have been, and to speak with Martin Housing and see if they would come to our assistance and provide more low-cost, low-rent housing to not only current citizens. You know, 2 or 3 days after the storm, me and members of the fire department walked the streets of Dresden in the low-income areas, and we knocked on every door to see if they had needs. And we were able to provide needs of ice because that the electricity's off and people had insulin and things that needed to be iced down. We were able to provide hamburgers and food to the folks. We were able to get personal items for them. It was one of the most gratifying things that I'd ever done, to go door to door and visit with those people and just sit and talk to them. It was also for our firemen who did that. And they had been up, that first night we were up all night. Some of us went home and got an hour's sleep and come back. But servitude, whether it's Christian servitude or just community servitude, is something that our community believes in. And we welcome that opportunity to be of Christian servitude. I do, in the future, and as well as to work hand in hand with, I don't care who it is. I'll work hand in hand with them to lift them up if we can possibly do so. And I invite you to come help me.
I would love that opportunity.
Well, come see me. Come see me. We'll work together.
How hard will you be fighting for the low-income housing to be returned and more added to Dresden?
Every unit that we've got in Dresden is full right now. And the number, I don't know the number, but if we could double it, that would tickle me to death. That's more people in our community that we can have as citizens of our community. We can grow. It provides more tax revenue to us, and I know that shouldn't be a consideration, but the federal government provides tax revenue. We're going to lose revenue because citizens have left our community. That's unfortunate, because it's going to lessen what we can provide to folks.
After you said that you were going to talk to Martin Housing, you directly made the quote, do you want the low rent and the people that rent from those?
Yes.
And then in the recent article where you personally addressed me, you also semi-ish labeled them as drug dealers and criminals. So
Well,
that begs the
be
question,
honest. Yeah.
how much are you really fighting for them? And the quotes that you make will have influence over the people who decide things on how much they're charging for rent. So what do you plan to do to fight for low housing?
The question is, what do I personally intend to do to help keep low rent housing? I'm not fully understanding. Could
Yes,
I
sir.
read? Could I read what you write? Show me which one.
And also added a point on the drug when I talked about it this time.
Yes.
When you were talking about low income people.
Yes, and I talked about in that article, in Dresden, who are the people that currently live in those houses? Currently, the people that live in those $200 to $300 housing are mostly people who are on probation and go to supervisory services or the state probation offices that are in our community. You don't have to believe me, you ask our police
No, I
department.
absolutely believe you, but
And,
that also brings to light the question, what's being done for those people? Because they're still citizens of Dresden, and the
They
housing
have
shouldn't be
the
taken away or
opportunity.
looked
Yeah.
looked at any less or fought for any less just because they are or have been that.
Okay.
Especially looking at the poverty rate, and
We have a poverty rate.
it's higher than the Tennessee and national average.
I know, and I've cited those figures before too, and that you just quoted, and I absolutely agree. We have a job problem in Dresden, and we would need more jobs for those people. To get jobs, I'm not talking about $8.50 jobs at the McDonald's either. I'm talking about we need $15 and $16 jobs for those people to work so they can live themselves up.
The jobs that are being brought in, will they pay a livable wage, or will they also be jobs like?
We're working right now on an industry that has told us that they would probably pay $19 to $20. You tell me if that's a livable wage. And I'm assured that it is, but I don't have no objection to everybody lifting themselves up. But there's got to be some effort by people to lift themselves up. Yes, most of those people are on probation. They're drug users, they're some meth dealers and things in those houses, and our police department are constantly, those are the houses I was speaking of and directly referencing in that statement. Those are the people that people in our community think that we need to address. And if we can lift those people up and get them back to be productive citizens, I tell you what, man, you'll dance in the street. Absolutely, I'd be tickled to death to see that happen.
A lot of people, whenever I was talking to citizens of Dresden, had some concerns about what the police are doing in regards to the problem.
Yes.
One lady even shared her personal story in the comments where you had told her to flush the
Let
drugs.
me tell you what that situation was. I was called by a young man about that situation, and he told me that somebody that he was related to had died at a residence. And he says the police left the drugs there, and they're aware that they were left there. And they asked, what did we do with them? My suggestion was throw them down. They were scared that they might, get charged with being in possession.
The
I suggested,
screenshots show otherwise. We have access to the screenshots, and they kind of show otherwise, that they were looking for help because it was labeled as a heart attack, but there was drugs on them, and it wasn't even tested. The drugs were never tested to see if they were laced with fentanyl or anything like that, and they wouldn't take them.
well, I had a discussion on the telephone that wasn't on any screenshots. And-
Right, but I'm talking about the
and-
screenshots that we have to have proof of the
But
conversation.
they, in those actual things, and I don't know what it has to do with what we're talking about tonight, but the police had gone out and investigated that death, and they left the drugs there. And I suggested that they flush them down in the mud because they were concerned about being there, possibly charged with them, and in the discussions they had with me. And that was 2 or 3 years ago.
Right, but the reason that it's valid today is because since there is a drug problem and people
There
have
is.
expressed concern about how the police are handling things, what's being done to help better correct that issue?
Well, the law enforcement answer is generally to go out and run undercover sting operations and things like that. Our department does that. I don't, but the real answer beyond police court system? Are the problems addressed, or is there mental health care afterwards? Do they address their addictions and things like that? I think those are all important aspects of it too. Our Weekly County Drug Court program has over a 75% success rate. The recidivism rate of those people are about 25%. It's a great program. It's one of the most successful in them. But the problem is there's just not that many people able to get into the program because the entry standards are so strong. They cannot have had a crime of violence in their past. There are other requirements that they have that are very strict to get in the program. So that's part of the reason we have a high success rate. You're picking the cream of the crop.
Right.
We need to include. My opinion is we need to expand the mission to it. We need to expand the admissibility to it. Drug problems are not addressed in jails.
Correct. Are there
Drug
any?
problems are not addressed in jails. You
Are there
address the problem of the addiction if you're going to take care of it. And all the poverty that results, the abuse that results, and all of the other secondary problems, they have to be addressed if we're going to tackle that problem in this country. And I don't think throwing everybody in jail is the answer, personally.
Are there any moves being made to lead towards that, or is it all just hypothetical at this point?
I wish I had some input on that, but I'm sorry, that's beyond my job description, so to speak. But I tell you what, I would love for y'all to address that with some with our judicial system and things like that, and ask them, let's do more. Let's do more to address the addictions and the problems and things.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Come on, young lady. Campbell, me. I'm going to stand more than 6 feet away from you. How's that?
Thank you. My name is Skylar, just to introduce myself. I'm just, okay, sorry, thank you. I'm very quiet spoken, so if I get quiet at any point, please let me know. And my name is Skylar, in case you couldn't hear me earlier. I am just here to speak to you, human to human. I am not here to cause an uproar. I am not here to make you out to be the bad guy either. I am simply here to talk to you about the concerns we are having in your community and that of Weakley County. One of the first things that were said about our advocacy was that we are just looking for a fight and that you wonder how many of us have truly helped individuals. I know I can't speak for everyone here with me, but I would like to. Several of our members here and who aren't here today have gone out into Dresden to help with the cleanup process or in the planning stages with other organizations to go.
I hope you come.
Yeah.
I invite you to let me know when you do come, and I'll make it work with you.
Thank you. I have personally volunteered for different organizations to help individuals affected by homelessness or low income. For example, I have volunteered at the Second Harvest Food Bank and have held several different clothing, book, and canned food drives to donate to various places. I have also spent a lot of time volunteering for Nathaniel's Hope, which is a nonprofit organization that helps families of children with special needs. The most prominent experience I have with this org is always around Christmas time. There are families who can barely afford medical care for their child or children, which leaves them with little to no ability to afford childcare or even Christmas presents. So regardless of your religion or what you do and don't believe or celebrate, there are families who you call criminals that are looking for ways to give their kids something memorable. Nathaniel's Hope gives free toys to these families for their children. Mayor Washburn and those of you in the audience, do you have any children or grandchildren?
I have actually 12 grandchildren and 5 children.
That's wonderful.
And I sure don't want the addictions and the problems and sometimes the way even our criminal justice system treats them. I happen to be a part-time public defender. My son sitting right up there is a full-time public defender. So we're working with the same people that you're talking about.
Okay.
And we're trying to help find them solutions other than jail. And I know firsthand that many of the problems that you're describing right now are true. But I'm not sure that society as a whole is addressing those problems in the way that they should.
Okay.
And I have to be quite frank about that.
I understand.
That's not the popular opinion.
No, I understand that. I'm gonna kind of continue back to what I was saying. So with your grandchildren and children in mind, you would give them the world if you could, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
I think all of us can agree to that. And you would spoil them around Christmas time if possible, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yep. I know this meeting isn't about Christmas, but it is about family. There are children that live here, and they deserve housing that is affordable. So children don't have to worry about drinking unsafe water or not being able to go on a school field trip. There are many of us here who have been in that situation, where we don't get dinner or don't know where we're going to be sleeping at night. We have also been unable to afford a school textbook or pay our bills or have even been homeless. Kids should not have to worry about these types of things. All I ask is that you listen to us with an open mind and understand that housing doesn't just affect the rent payers or the lack thereof, but also the families, children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. No one is saying that there aren't outliers and problems in this world. We're all human and we are prone to error, but housing is a human right. I'm asking you to listen with an open heart and an open mind. Are you able to set aside the pride, the office, the position, the status, and listen to us with not only your ears, but your heart? We are again not here to fight you, but to help you and your community, your Dresden family. Will you let us?
What I encourage you to do is set up a meeting and come talk to me. And I'll sit down and I'll talk to you for as long as you want to talk. And if you want to get out here and work in the community, I'll be out here working in this community hand in hand with you. We'll be lockstep trying to achieve the same goals.
I understand. I would just like to talk about this today too. We understand that not everything is going to be cheap all of the time. However, putting words into our mouths and suggesting that we are only looking for a cause to fight in, this week tells us that you aren't listening to your community's concerns. In a quote by the Weekly County Press, and I'm just paraphrasing, this isn't going to be a direct quote on you, you said that a majority of Dresden residents have already been helped in some way. Could you? Okay.
As far as it's amazing the amount of money that's already been put out in our community.
Okay. May I ask my question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Could you please be more specific? In what ways were they helped, and who have you specifically helped?
The first help that started a day after there was people walking the streets handing out food cards and handing out sandwiches and handing out gas cards and things like that. It wasn't targeted at anybody. As I said, on those first days, everybody was working arm in arm. We didn't recognize the difference in anything.
Were you also out there?
Yes, ma'am. My own house was tore up as well as a business, and I ignored my own house and my own business to be out working and trying to help the citizens in my community. It cost me a marriage. It cost me a marriage.
I'm sorry to hear that. Is that the cost of your marriage? What are your future plans to help individuals in need or are homeless or unable to afford Christmas presents for their children?
Well, in this particular case, the Dresden Elsdelites fed people for days, for about 2 weeks, and they provided a Christmas present for everybody that wanted one, and multiple, as well as our distribution center, our donation center. Likewise, received hundreds of Christmas presents for, and every child that wanted a present, and some that weren't even expecting a present, received a present in our community. So yes, there was a good Christmas for every child, and I hope that every other Christmas after this is just as good as this one.
No, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. But what are your future plans to help individuals in need or who are homeless?
Help the homeless. That's a good question, and that's a complex question.
I understand.
And I'm sure that somebody's got the answer to it, but I'm sure that I don't tonight. And I'm open to input from anyone that wants to provide.
I understand that.
But let me tell you that we do have a men's shelter in Dresden that serves the homeless, and I was set on the board of directors for that for a while. And it also helped abused women and people with drug addictions and things like that. So I've been directly involved in those things, and I'm proud of that.
I would just like to know what your future plans will be.
I don't know that I'll be mayor that long, and some folks said I'm going to resign next week, but I doubt that's going to happen. But
It's okay if you're not mayor in the future. Just there's still things that you can do.
If I am mayor in the future, I'm dedicated to try to resolve those problems and address them. I don't know that I can solve them. There's a lot smarter people out there than me that have tried, and
That's okay. I'm not asking you to solve any of our problems, just try to help to the best of our ability.
And I welcome that. There's maybe something that UTM students such as yourself and other young people like yourself can do to help address that problem in our community. It's a problem. I found where people have been sleeping in basements of houses, abandoned houses and things, and they've been sleeping in public buildings, barns and things in our community. It's evidence that we got a hidden homeless problem in our community. People are sleeping in cars and different things, and it's not a pretty sight to see. And you see them, but you don't see them. And they're mingle in with the community during the day, and at night they find some place to go, and wherever it can out of the wet and the cold. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed nationwide, not just in Dresden, Tennessee.
Well, of course, I'm not trying to single Dresden out either. But when we talked about rebuilding with housing, what are your future plans to help people that might not be able to afford the new housing?
There's a group here tonight that are going to assist us in the long-term recovery process, talking about rebuilding process. A lot of that is going to be done by volunteers. Everyone on the group that's going to be on the long-term recovery group is going to be volunteers. Mayor Bynum and myself are stepping back away from that. It's going to be independent people that are doing that, citizens of our community. It's going to be people bringing money to our community and making those donations are going to help us out. There's going to be people in social service agencies that will probably be involved in that as well. So maybe a UTM student will be involved in it.
Okay.
You might be a good candidate.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's all the questions that I have. But
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Statement recorded.
Yes. Or was it no?
Awesome. First, for all of you over here, I'd like to thank you for being here and for everything that you've helped with and for everything that I have personally received from all of you. I live downtown in Dresden and I'm in one of the houses that's been hit, and as all of you know, the struggle has been real. I've seen and met with every single one of you about something or another, and I appreciate that, and the community appreciates that. For a couple of the things over here, because I live downtown in Dresden, because I am working middle class, I would like to offer my phone number, my address, my help with anything that any of my neighbors you have spoken to have concerns about. Being in this position, if they're worried that their voice isn't being heard, I'll go with them to the city hall meeting. We will make sure that their voice is heard. If they have any kind of issue, knowing these people personally, I promise I can take them to any one of their doors in the middle of the night and they will get them the help that they need. This has been a wonderful group of people, and with everything that has been difficult for me and my family and my neighbors, they've been there since December 10th, constantly. So please, come see me. I will happily give my number so you can give it out. I will give you my address so you can give it out, so I can be a middle point for the people that don't feel comfortable talking directly to the mayor.
I don't think any of
hello. I just have two quick questions that are just kind of more specific to what you've already just said. Oh, my name is Emily Haley. Hi. So along with your confirmation of at least trying to attempt to find low-income housing in Dresden, when do you think conversations with Martin Housing will start, and how long do you think we'll see, low-income housing
It
come
will
back to
actually
Dresden?
start when the long-term recovery group starts meeting and things like that. I think Martin Housing is the best hope for low-cost housing.
Of course.
You don't see many contractors or developers running in to build low-cost. They're going to build a medium income, and they're looking for the higher income because that's where their profits are going to be. So we have to rely upon government agencies to provide the funding for that, so it can be low cost. But it has to be. in order to be low cost at today's lumber prices and building material prices, you're going to have a process of government subsidizing it in some way or another. And okay, is that better? I was talking face to face here, and I didn't want to talk too loud to her, but we've got to look for solutions to
Yes,
that.
and just on average, how long do you think it will be until those conversations start? Just a guess.
I anticipate that the long-term recovery conversations are going to start within 3 months. And but that's just the process. And what they're going to do initially is look for needs. This long-term recovery is going to help with rebuilding of houses. They're going to distribute this FEMA lumber that's going to be donated. They're going to look for resources. There's a resource called House in a Box. And we've got a commitment that they're probably going to send us 20 houses in a box. They're not actually sending a house in a box, but it's furniture, enough furniture to stock up to 3-bedroom houses for up to 20 homes. We hope we build every one of them and we stock them with that. And it doesn't get much cheaper than that, because probably those homes are going to be built at no cost to the person, or rebuilt. That's what we're going to address first. There's rebuilding, and then these stock them up with furniture. It includes everything to move in and start going.
Yes, sir. And in addition, part of your job is to oversee and meet the needs of the citizens of Dresden. And of course, you've mentioned some stuff about that, but earlier you also mentioned homeless population and the hidden homeless population within Dresden. So do you have any plans to hopefully help those people who have no homes right now because of the tornado, or just the homeless population, just to help
Right now, most of those people, and Miss Washington down there would be better, or Kathy up on the top row up there, who have been doing casework on these cases. And they've assisted with the Red Cross assistance. They've assisted with the FEMA applications, and they've also directed people to the SBA applications and things of that nature. But they have a better idea about what's being done to help people get back in their homes than I do. Mayor Biden has a better idea, because he's working out at the recovery center practically every day since it started. I've been the man that's been out in the field talking to people individually and going around seeing the contractors and trying to help people get their homes demolished and get started on the rebuilding process. But there are a lot of resources, effort been put into those resources to give people assistance. From Red Cross, which didn't leave a lot of money in our community, but they did leave some money to people in the most dire need. They provided assistance to get them in hotel rooms. They provided rent assistance. They provided rent down payments and things for people who moved to Martin during that period of time, and some of them are still relocated in other cities. So they provided assistance there. Then after Red Cross was gone, FEMA came in with the individual assistance, and people applied to FEMA, and they still have up to February 15th to apply for individual assistance through FEMA for all of those things I've before mentioned, plus other things such as medical needs, unmet medical needs, drug assistance, things like that, replace vital equipment and personal property that is needed for medical appliances, things like that. So those are some of the things that FEMA has assisted with. But the truth is, even after FEMA provided assistance, there are unmet needs. There are unmet needs. Didn't make them whole. They didn't get them back in the same condition they were in. So SBA, they were encouraged to go to SBA and borrow money, but not everybody can borrow money. They have no credit. Any number of bankruptcies and things like that prevent you from borrowing money. So that leads us to what's about to happen. And what's about to happen is that this long-term recovery group is going to come in. They're going to come in with volunteers, a lot of volunteers, and they're going to rebuild some houses. They're going to put roofs on houses. They're going to improve existing housing, and then with the room or house in a box and some other things, the donations of lumber that are coming, we were asked to provide 10,000 square feet of warehousing space just to warehouse the furniture that might be arriving here pretty soon. And the city of Dresden is going to provide space to store this lumber that's coming in. So a lot of that's coming in. Have we solved the problem then? No. We still got a ways to go because we got to get the people back in those houses and get them back in where they can live there and meet the needs that they have. So the unmet needs is what this long-term recovery group is going to be all about. We're going to look at people that haven't been made whole by the government agencies and the loan agencies and the American Red Cross, all the contributions that have been made by the religious organizations, and the religious organizations have been absolutely amazing. They're still working day in and day out. I can look through this room right here and see people that I know that are out there every day in the trenches trying to help people. And but the long-term recovery is going to be the secret to the distribution of this money that I know that's going to go over 500,000. It may be as much as $1 million when everything's said and done, because it's still coming in. And I hope it does keep coming in so we can meet those unmet needs. The question was asked on one Facebook page that says, what are unmet needs? It's not the needs of the city of Dresden. Our needs will be met through the taxpayers of this community through either loans or government grants and things like that to rebuild our municipal complex. And us rebuilding that municipal complex does not affect those unmet needs being met, because they are going to be met a different way that is beyond the touch of government agencies, including the city of Dresden. And I'm happy that it's that way, because sometimes government gets a little greedy. But this way ensures that the money is going to go to the people it was intended for, just like that 100,000 that came from Cookeville, Putnam County was intended to assist the individuals. And I'm glad that it's that way. Now, the city of Dresden has received some money specifically to rebuild the city. People gave their money and they designated. Originally was $23,000. There was a foundation that gave us another $25,000. We got about $48,000 given to the city of Dresden specifically for rebuilding the public facility that was destroyed by the tornado, and it was a whole city block worth. So we're going to address that, and the city will use that money to help build something that's beneficial to every citizen in our community, such as a fire station, police station, city hall building, and try to make it better to be something 75 to 100 years is still here and serving the citizens in this community. But I'm glad that we've got this long-term recovery group that is going to address those needs that are unmet by government, by Red Cross or anybody else, and they can apply for it, and hopefully it will make them whole again, or is in a good position, or hopefully even a better position than they were before. Thank you for asking that question.
And that concludes my question. Thank you for
All
your
right,
time.
come join us. Anybody else have a question?
Can I speak to right here?
You're going to.
No, Chase. Okay, we set the rule, Chase. There's rules.
I'll tell you anyways, and I'll be kicked out of y'all there. I go to a lot of board meetings, a lot of them, and I'll tell you the number one problem at empty seats. Every one of these leaders relies on y'all. You need y'all. They get out of there in 45 minutes to an hour. You know, I like to see monthly board meetings like the 4th of July where they last 3 or 4 hours. I want to do this very simple. My hands are all up because I always ask questions need to answer. And they depend on you. 9 times out of 10, whatever you tell them before they're not going to be able to do because they have to balance budgets. That's the hard part. and that's what you'll learn. If they need y'all there, they depend on all of your comments and your ideas. Everybody in this world is both smart and dumb. Each of us has strengths and weaknesses. Figure out your weaknesses and build your strengths. But they're never going to do anything unless y'all go to those board meetings. I go every month. I'm the only one that hardly speaks half the time unless it's the Irish sessions or something else. Hell, so I encourage all of y'all, go to those board meetings every month. Learn about your government, what they do. And thank you, thank you.
You're not wrong, Chase. You don't like a rule. That's upsetting to me because I like rules. But you're not wrong. That was one of the points I was going to make, is that as we move forward through this process, you will ask, are the voices at the table? They're not. Let's be completely honest. There is not a diverse group of voices at the table because those voices aren't coming to the table. That does, and I'm just going to be perfectly honest with every single person in this room. All of you all that are impacted survivors, you certainly understand this. This has probably been the most challenging time in your entire life. The mayor is an impacted survivor. He was sitting in a home that is uninhabitable today. So I do want to make that point. He's also the mayor of a community that's completely devastated. So what I think is also really important for us to consider and for us to take into consideration is one of the things that I have continually said is that this is not just a Dresden problem and it's not just the mayor's problem to fix. And we've all got to work together to get every single impacted survivor in a better place, not in a better place than they are now, but in a better place than they were on December the 10th. But we've got to work together to get every single citizen of Weakley County in a better place than they were on December the 10th. And there are lots of problems. And the really tough part about that is that this incident brought all of those problems to the surface. And so now you're trying to address how do you get somebody's home that's been destroyed to the right-of-way, and how do you get that debris picked up, and how do you get your streets cleaned up, and how do you build new municipal buildings, while also addressing the structural issues of our community, of how do you deal with poverty, what do we do about the drug problem, where do we find places for people to live that didn't have somewhere to live to begin with. So what we should do, and Lord knows, this has been a really terrible night for me because I haven't gotten to spend hardly any time at a microphone, and it's my very, very, very favorite place to stand. Is that we also have to extend each other grace, and that goes both ways. Emotions are high, tensions are stressed, people are challenged. We've got to do better to be better. We've got to take into consideration that Mike Carroll is struggling, but because Mike Carroll is struggling, he also gets to have a voice at the table because he brings value, he brings knowledge, and most importantly, he brings a perspective that I don't have today. Now, we also have to take into consideration that we have an entire group that we would love to retain for years and years and years to come. Lord knows I'd love to have Kai Simmons sitting at my county commission table years from now. And she is a citizen of Weakley County today. And so her opinion and her thoughts matter just as much as anybody else's does. I think tonight has been beneficial. I think it has been challenging. I think there are lots of opportunities for us to move forward and to do better, whether that's through Prosperity Task Force, whether that's implementing programs that can be funded through opioid abatement, or whether that's just working within the structures and the systems that we have already in place. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to fix this. The mayor's not going to fix this. City boards aren't going to fix this. County commissions aren't going to fix this. It's going to take every single person in this room, in this county, in this region to fix these problems. Now, I will close this out by saying, if you or anyone you know has a need, has a concern, has a challenge, needs a resource, I can't promise that we're going to get that done. What I will promise is that we will work every single day to address the challenges that we currently face and the challenges that we don't even know exist for tomorrow. But we've got to do it together. So we look forward to seeing you all in 7 days, because that's when the FEMA and SBA deadline is in 7 days. So make sure you apply for FEMA and SBA, whether you think you need it or not. And we will see you all next time. Have a good evening.